The lobby shimmered like a palace. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbows across marble floors. Armani suits brushed past Gucci gowns, and the air smelled of champagne and power. Every detail screamed luxury, except for you. You weren't wearing a tuxedo. You weren't carrying a Rolex. You were carrying a cardboard delivery box. The moment you stepped inside the five-star hotel lobby, all eyes flicked to you. A hush rolled over the crowd like a wave. The man standing at the front desk, a tall, silver-haired CEO with a diamond tie clip, smirked as if he had just spotted a cockroach crawling across his pristine empire. "Excuse me," he barked, his voice slicing through the chatter. "Deliveries. Go through the back, this entrance is for guests." Laughter rippled across the room. A group of executives sipping martinis glanced at you, their eyes filled with smug amusement. The CEO leaned closer, inspecting your uniform as though the very sight of it offended him. "Who let this delivery boy walk across my marble floor?" His words dripped with disdain, his tone dragging you down into the dirt. "Do you people ever learn?" The phrase stung. You people. 2 words, heavy with centuries of poison. You opened your mouth to respond, but the sting on your dignity burned hotter than fire. The CEO wasn't finished. "Tell you what," he said, straightening his diamond cufflinks. "Since you've already polluted the air in here, why don't you make yourself useful? Carry these contracts upstairs. If you don't drop them, maybe I'll give you a tip. What's the going rate for someone like you? $5? The executives laughed again, but this time so did the hotel guests. Phones appeared in hands. Screens glowed. Red recording dots blinked like fireflies. The humiliation wasn't just for the dozen people in that marble lobby anymore. It was for the world. One woman whispered, "He should be ashamed, treating a man like that." But she didn't whisper quietly enough. The CEO caught it, turned, and sneered. "Don't pity him," the CEO said loudly. "This is where he belongs." Carrying boxes for real men. You didn't flinch. Instead, you placed the cardboard package gently on the marble counter. For a brief moment, your fingers brushed against the lapel of your jacket, where a small silver pin glimmered, unnoticed by most, but catching the light like a buried secret waiting to be revealed. You straightened your posture, calm, silent, watching. The CEO mistook your silence for surrender. He leaned in so close you could smell the whiskey on his breath. "Go on, boy. Take the service elevator. You're wasting the guests' oxygen." Phones kept recording. The hashtag began to form in whispers. #hotel humiliation. Within minutes it would be trending. But in this glittering lobby, the only thing louder than the CEO's arrogance was the storm about to come crashing down on him. Because what no one knew, not the laughing executives, not the gawking guests, not even the silver-haired tyrant standing inches from your face, was that the man they thought was just a delivery driver owned the very building they stood in. But the truth wasn't ready to be revealed. Not yet. The world would have to choke on his arrogance first, and when the reveal came, it would silence the entire room. The night sky outside the hotel glittered with city lights, but your mind wasn't on neon or champagne. It was on the weight of memories that the uniform across your chest could never erase. Because the truth was simple. You weren't a delivery driver. You were playing a role. That faded brown jacket, the scuffed boots, the cardboard box. Props in a theater where everyone judged books by their covers. And tonight the audience was merciless. The humiliation at the hotel lobby wasn't the first time someone had tried to write your story for you. It was just the latest chapter. Years earlier, you had walked the cracked sidewalks of a forgotten neighborhood, a place where the streetlights flickered out more often than they glowed, where kids carried textbooks in backpacks with broken zippers, where success was often another word for survival. You remembered standing in front of a rusted gate as a child, gripping your mother's hand while she whispered, "Don't let them tell you where you belong." You decide that. Those words became your oxygen. Through scholarships and sleepless nights, you devoured textbooks while working side jobs that paid in sweat. While your classmates cruised in BMWs, you flipped burgers at midnight. While CEOs mocked you for being out of place at networking events, you collected their words like ammunition, and slowly you built something they never saw coming. The first business was small, an app that helped local restaurants manage deliveries more efficiently. Irony, perhaps, that your empire began with boxes and drivers, but within a year it had contracts with chains across 3 states. Then came the investors, the meetings in glass towers, the handshakes that turned into acquisitions. By the time the ink dried on your 5th merger, you weren't just successful, you were untouchable, and yet you never advertised it. No flashy interviews, no celebrity endorsements, just calculated moves, silence, and precision. Your wealth stayed hidden behind trusts and holding companies. Your properties were under shell corporations, but one building mattered more than the others: the hotel chain you quietly purchased during a downturn. When markets panicked, you seized. When tycoons laughed, you signed the checks they couldn't. And tonight, the CEO who mocked you stood in your lobby, drowning in marble and arrogance. Still, you hadn't revealed the truth. Not yet. As you leaned against the counter, your fingers traced that tiny silver pin again. An engraving, almost invisible, marked it, the emblem of the hotel's founding family. The only clue that the delivery driver standing in Humiliation actually sat at the top of the chain. Your watch ticked softly beneath your cuff. A limited edition, Patek Philippe, customized with your initials. No one noticed. They only saw the jacket. But the foreshadowing had begun. The cameras recording the CEO's insults were not just spreading a moment of humiliation. They were capturing the opening act of a reckoning. In boardrooms across the city, whispers had already started. Someone had spotted your face in an old Forbes cover photo. Someone else had noticed the way the hotel staff kept glancing at you, as if waiting for an order instead of giving one. Your silence was strategy. You let the CEO bury himself deeper, word by arrogant word. Because soon the world would know, this man wasn't mocking a driver. He was mocking the landlord who held his fate in iron chains. And when the reveal came, it wouldn't just silence the room. It would set fire to the internet. But what came next would make even the CEO's closest allies turn against him. The marble lobby no longer felt like a lobby. It felt like an arena. The CEO's booming voice echoed against the glass walls, his words sharp and poisonous. "People like you don't belong here," he said again, louder this time, as if to make sure every chandelier, every column, every guest could bear witness to his dominance. But he hadn't noticed the glow. Dozens of phone screens were aimed at you. Guests, employees, even passing tourists. All of them had their cameras raised, capturing every smirk, every cruel inflection, every "you people" he spat. And within minutes, the lobby became a live stream. On Twitter, the first video appeared with the caption, "CEO humiliates delivery man in luxury hotel lobby." It was only 30 seconds long, but it had everything. The sneer, the insult, the laughter of executives, and your silence. A silence that felt heavier than a punch. By the time the CEO ordered you toward the service elevator again, the video already had 10,000 views. By the time he laughed and tossed a $5 bill at your feet, the clip had been retweeted by a CNN reporter. "Unbelievable arrogance in 2025, the tweet read. Likes, 32,000. Retweets, climbing by the second. Back inside the lobby, the air began to shift. Guests whispered. Some backed away from the CEO, afraid of being caught on the wrong side of a scandal. A young woman holding a champagne glass murmured, "He's trending." "Oh my God, he's already trending." And she was right. On Instagram, #DoYouKnowWhoIam was climbing the charts. On TikTok, edits of the confrontation were paired with captions like, 2025 and this still happens? Even hotel staff were whispering, behind polished counters, their eyes darting between you and the man barking insults. The CEO noticed the whispers but misread them as awe. He puffed his chest, relishing the spotlight. "Record it, go ahead," he boomed. "The world should see what happens when order is kept." He had no idea. The world was indeed watching. and the comments were merciless. Imagine being this cruel to someone working hard. Does this man not know every phone is a weapon? He just ended his career on camera. But the most chilling comment came from an account with a blue checkmark, a Wall Street insider who had followed your career for years in silence. Wait, isn't that him? Look at the pin on his lapel. That single comment sparked confusion, then wildfire. Strangers zoomed in on screenshots of your jacket, the glint of the silver pin. Reddit threads opened, dissecting every frame, debating whether the delivery driver was in fact someone far more powerful. And while the world speculated, the CEO doubled down. "Get out of my lobby," he snarled, voice hoarse from shouting. He snatched the $5 bill back from the floor and shoved it into your chest. "You're lucky I don't call security. People like you are always ruining places like this." Phones caught it all. The hashtags multiplied. #hotel humiliation, #CEO exposed, #you people. The soundbite of his insult looped on TikTok, paired with captions like, "Career suicide in 12 seconds flat." Back in the marble silence, you finally lifted your eyes and looked at him. Calm, patient, as though you were staring not at an enemy, but at a man already buried. And yet, you said nothing, because the internet was doing the work for you. By the time you reached for the box again, the clip had surpassed 1 million views. Board members, investors, journalists, all of them were watching in real time as their star CEO dismantled his own reputation. But what the world didn't know was that humiliation was just the beginning. The real shock was still hidden, waiting for the moment when silence would break. And when it did, it wouldn't just be trending. It would rewrite power itself. The marble clock above the lobby struck 9. Its chime cut through the tension, but nothing silenced the arrogance of the CEO. "You still here?" he barked. "I told you, deliveries belong at the back. Don't make me call security." He snapped his fingers. 2 uniformed guards stepped forward, their shoes clicking against the polished floor. But even they hesitated, eyes flicking not to him, but to you. Because they had noticed. The pin, that small silver emblem on your lapel. To most, it looked like a simple accessory, a decorative badge. But to the staff of this hotel, it wasn't decoration. It was heritage. It was legacy. It was the crest of the founding family, engraved into every cornerstone of the chain's history, and it was only worn by one man, the current owner. A hush fell. One of the guards cleared his throat. "Sir, are you sure?" The CEO cut him off with a roar. "Don't question me. He's a delivery boy in a dirty jacket. He doesn't belong here." Phones caught every word, every vein bulging in his forehead. "You didn't move. You simply placed the cardboard box back onto the counter. This time, though, you slid your hand into your pocket. A murmur swept the crowd as you drew it out, a black rectangle glinting under the chandelier light. Heavy, sleek, the American Express Centurion card, black titanium, a billionaire's passport. The CEO froze, mid-breath. Executives leaned forward, whispering furiously. Guests gasped. The guard stepped back, suddenly rigid, unsure of where the hierarchy now stood. You didn't flash it like a trophy. You set it down gently on the marble counter beside the package. The sound of metal against stone was louder than the CEO's last insult. Someone whispered, That's not possible." Another, "Do you know what that card means?" The whispers rose into a tide. The internet, already ablaze, exploded with screenshots. #Centurion, owner, #not just a driver, #the pin Reddit threads, zoomed in on the pin again. "It's official," one post declared. "That's him, he's the owner." The CEO tried to laugh, but it came out thin, broken. "A trick," he sneered. "Anyone can get a pin. Anyone can wave a fancy card." But his voice had lost its command. Even he could feel it. The air shifting, the ground beneath his polished shoes cracking. And then the hotel manager, pale and sweating, stepped out from behind the counter. His eyes darted from the card to the pin to your face. His voice trembled. "Sir, Mr. Carter, The CEO's head whipped around. What did you just call him? The manager swallowed hard, bowing his head. Sir, this isn't a delivery man. This is... He hesitated, his throat dry. This is the owner of the chain. Gasps detonated across the lobby. A glass shattered as someone dropped their champagne. Flute. The guards stepped back entirely now, hands at their sides. The CEO's smirk vanished, replaced by a slack-jawed silence. His eyes darted to the phone cameras, to the executives shifting uncomfortably, to the staff who suddenly stood taller in your presence. The humiliation was over. The reveal had begun. But what came next would not just silence a lobby. It would bring an empire crashing down. The boardroom smelled of leather and power, dark mahogany walls, a long glass table polished to a mirror sheen, and city lights twinkling beyond the 32nd floor windows. Here, deals worth billions had been signed. Here, futures of companies were decided with a flick of a pen. But tonight, the silence inside that boardroom was louder than any gavel. Screens lined the walls, all replaying the same viral clip. The CEO in the lobby, sneering, tossing a $5 bill, shouting you people at a man he thought beneath him. Except the man wasn't beneath him. The man was you. Executives shifted, uncomfortably in their chairs. Some avoided eye contact altogether, tapping pens nervously against notepads. Others scrolled through their phones, watching the retweet counter climb into the millions. #hotel humiliation, #CEO exposes, #the pin. The hashtags weren't just trending anymore. They had dominated every platform. CNN, Bloomberg, even late-night comedians had already picked it up. The story wasn't just news. It was a cultural earthquake. At the head of the table, the CEO tried to reclaim his throne. His diamond tie clip sparkled under the recessed lights as he slammed a hand down. This is ridiculous, he snapped. A stunt. He's a fraud, a delivery man with a card and a pin, but even as he spoke, the doors opened, and you walked in. The room shifted. Executives stood halfway, unsure whether to rise fully. The CEO froze, his knuckles white against the table edge. You didn't say a word. You simply slid a folder onto the table. The hotel manager, trailing behind you, placed another beside. Didn't contracts, deeds, ownership papers, signatures notarized and filed. The documents left no room for doubt. You were not just the owner of this hotel. You were the majority shareholder of the entire chain. The silence deepened. An older board member adjusted his glasses, flipping through the pages, his eyes widening. Finally, he looked at you with something between fear and respect. It's true, he whispered. He owns us. The CEO's face turned crimson. He pointed at you, his finger trembling. This is my boardroom. You leaned forward, calm, voice low, but cutting. Correction, it's mine. You're sitting in my chair. Phones buzzed. A junior executive read a notification aloud without meaning to. Stock dropped 7 points in the last hour. The words hung. Heavy. Millions of dollars evaporated in real time. Shareholders were already calling, demanding answers, demanding heads. And the only head on the chopping block was the CEO's. Your silence stretched. You let the weight of the papers, the weight of the pin on your lapel, the weight of the black centurion card on the table, do the speaking. The CEO's arrogance faltered. His voice cracked. You set me up. You shook your head once, slowly. No, you set yourself up. I just let you. The room chilled. Executives looked at one another, silently calculating their allegiances. The math was simple. Loyalty to the CEO meant financial ruin. Aligning with you meant survival. One by one, chairs shifted. Board members turned toward you. Their silence wasn't just respect, it was surrender. And in that moment, the CEO realized he was alone. The boardroom wasn't his fortress anymore, it was his courtroom. And you were the judge. But what happened next wouldn't just strip him of a title. It would dismantle his empire, piece by arrogant piece. The fall of an empire never begins with an explosion. It begins with silence. the kind of silence that filled the boardroom after your last words. The CEO sat frozen, his diamond tie clip suddenly looking like cheap glass. Around him, executives shifted their weight, avoiding his gaze, their loyalty dissolving like sugar in fire. Then came the first crack. Effective immediately, one board member said, her voice sharp with authority. I motion for removal of Mr. Harrington as acting CEO. The words hit like a gunshot. Gasps rippled around the table. The CEO sputtered, his voice cracking. You can't do this. I built this company. But his protests were drowned by phones buzzing with breaking alerts. CNN breaking, #hotel humiliation, CEO faces boardroom revolt. Bloomberg, stock plummets as owner, steps forward, CEO under fire. BBC, viral video sparks federal scrutiny into CEO's eyes. Dealings, your silence was deliberate. You didn't need to speak. The world was already sentencing him. The collapse unfolded in real time. Shareholders, furious, demanded accountability for the viral scandal. Civil rights groups filed lawsuits, citing racial discrimination. Activists launched boycotts that spread across continents. Then came the federal inquiry. Reporters outside the boardroom shouted questions as documents leaked. Shady offshore accounts, under-the-table deals, tax evasions buried beneath shell companies. All of it dragged into daylight by the magnifying glass of humiliation. The CEO tried to roar above the storm. You can't fire me, you need me. But his voice no longer carried weight. He was a king shouting at a crumbling castle. Executives avoided his eyes, sliding papers toward you instead, contracts transferring authority, board votes shifting in your favor. His empire was slipping, not because you took it, but because he handed it away the moment he revealed what kind of man he truly was. Social media didn't let up. The clip of him tossing a $5 bill at you looped endlessly. Memes spread, captions biting harder than any lawsuit. $5 for a $1 billion mistake. You didn't slap a driver. You slapped your boss. The hashtags evolved. #CEO resigns, #billionaire justice, #fall of Harrington. His personal accounts flooded with rage. Sponsors pulled out of contracts. Even his oldest allies refused to take his calls. By nightfall, he was escorted from the boardroom by security, his polished shoes scuffed against the floor as cameras flashed outside. The man who mocked you, hours earlier, now shielded his face from microphones. And in the boardroom, you sat quietly at the head of the table, the seat he once claimed as his throne. The platinum pin gleamed beneath the lights. The Centurion card lay still beside the contracts. The CEO's collapse wasn't just professional, it was existential. The world had seen who he truly was, and there was no empire strong enough to rebuild from ashes this toxic. But the final blow hadn't been delivered yet. That would come from you, in public, in cold precision. And when it landed, the world would never forget the sound. The ballroom was packed. Chandeliers glittered, cameras flashed, and the world's press gathered like vultures waiting for a carcass. Except tonight, the carcass wasn't just a man. It was an empire. On stage, the CEO stood trembling, forced into the spotlight. His once impeccable Armani suit now looked like armor that no longer fit. Sweat rolled down his temples. Every eye in the room burned into him, not with respect, but with disgust. The board had voted. The contracts had been signed. The title of CEO was stripped. He was now just another disgraced executive, clinging to excuses the world no longer bought. But the humiliation wasn't complete, not yet, because seated in the front row, calm and composed, was you. The man he had called boy, the man he shoved toward the service elevator, the man he tried to buy with a crumpled $5 bill. The host called your name. The crowd rose in applause as you walked toward the stage, your tailored suit catching the light, the platinum pin glinting like a crown. The Centurion card peeked from your pocket, the quiet reminder of a world he never knew you controlled. You didn't rush. Every step echoed with justice. Every pause reminded the CEO of the lobby, of the words he couldn't take back. When you reached the podium, The applause faded into silence. You stood tall, scanning the crowd. Thousands of phones pointed at you, live streaming every breath. Finally, you turned toward him. The man who had mocked you now shrank under your gaze. His lips trembled, searching for words, but none came. And then you spoke. You didn't just insult a man carrying a box, you said, your voice deep, steady, cinematic. You insulted the man who built the building you stood in. You thought my silence meant weakness. But my silence was a gift, a chance for you to reveal who you really are. The room exhaled as though it had been holding its breath. You leaned forward, eyes locked on him. Rules, you said, the corner of your mouth curling into, "Steal. I write the rules you pretend to enforce." Gasps rippled. Some clapped instinctively, others whispered as hashtags bloomed in real time. The CEO's face crumbled. He looked at the cameras, the audience, the board members, all turned against him. His empire was gone, his legacy shattered. And all it had taken was his own arrogance, mirrored back by the man he had underestimated. You ended it with one final line, cold and merciless. Some lessons cost millions. For him, one insult cost everything. The crowd erupted. Reporters scrambled to push the story out. The internet surged again, this time not with outrage but with awe. And in that moment, the humiliation was complete. The man who had mocked you was nothing but a footnote. You, the silent billionaire, had become the headline. The balance of power had shifted forever. The night ended not with champagne, not with celebration, but with silence. A silence that echoed through the marble halls of the hotel chain you. Mundipo. Guests whispered your name with reverence. Employees walked taller, knowing their real leader had finally stepped into the light. On social media, the story was immortal. Edits of the CEO's downfall flooded TikTok. Tweets of your one-liners hit millions of likes. News anchors called it the corporate reckoning of the decade. But for you, it wasn't about headlines or applause. It was about something quieter. Justice. The child gripping his mother's hand at a rusted gate had kept a promise. Never let them decide where you belonged. Tonight, you proved it to the world. And as you stood by the window of your penthouse suite, city lights flickering beneath you, the Centurion card resting quietly on the desk, you whispered the only truth that mattered. Respect is not given. It's taken back. The empire was yours, the future unwritten, and the world was watching.